A powerful global fashion brand is in the dock. And this time, it's not about style, but stolen identity. A PIL has been filed against Prada, yes, the luxury label, for using the iconic Kolhapuri chappals in their collection without giving credit to the artisans, without acknowledging the heritage, and without honoring the geographical indication tag, which is the GI tag that Kolhapuri chappals proudly hold. The petition by Ganesh Hingmire points to a deeper issue: cultural appropriation without accountability. Mr. Ganesh Hingmire, who is an intellectual property advocate, while Prada accepted that its collection is inspired by Indians, the acknowledgement only came in after facing widespread backlash. The petition says, and I quote, "The Kolhapuri chappal is the cultural symbol of Maharashtra and has special public sentiments attached to it. The brand has privately accepted that its collection is inspired by Indian artisans. However, this acknowledgement surfaced only after facing widespread backlash on various social media platforms. This acknowledgement was given to the private entity and not to the applicant makers of Kolhapuri chappals, GI, registry government, or the public at large." It goes on to say that the brand has not yet issued any formal apology along with damages, compensation, and an entitled remedy, and the statement appears to be merely a superficial attempt to deflect criticism. The petitioner has also criticized global fashion brands for copying traditional Indian designs like brocade, block printing, bandhani, sharara, and sari. This comes as Dior is also under fire for showcasing an intricately crafted coat at the luxury label in Paris on June 27th. The coat stood out because of its use of Mukesh work, a metal strand embroidery technique from Lucknow. However, the Indian artisans were not given their due credit, triggering a backlash. India's artisans, ladies and gentlemen, whoever inherited the legacy of Kolhapuri craft for generations, are now watching it walk the global runway. However, they have been stripped of their name, their history, and their dues. There has been public backlash, but no apology. There has been outrage, but no compensation. So the question that I ask on the show tonight: can global brands profit off our roots while pretending they don't exist? This is more than just a copyright battle. It's a fight for recognition, for respect, and for rightful credit. Because when heritage is hijacked, silence is not an option. Joining me on the show, Mayank Chaudhary is our stylist and fashion editor of NDTV. Ganesh Hingmire is petitioner and intellectual property advocate. Karun and Leon are designers and founders of Carleo. So welcome to this broadcast. Mr. Ganesh Hingmire, thank you for that PIL. It was needed, and thank you for taking this issue up so passionately. But are you hopeful for some kind of compensation for the Kolhapuri artisans?
I'm 100% hopeful that, because the first thing happened about, they appreciated that it was particularly taken from the Indian heritage, and particularly most important, anyone can easily judge that Kolhapuri chappal and then the views in the fashion show very similar. We have covered the comparative analysis, how it is deceptively similar, and mainly such kind of a violation of the geographical indication. Let me tell you about the geographical indication first of all. And geographical indication is a is an intellectual property right. That's community's intellectual property right, and that particularly the Kolhapuri Chappal already received the geographical indication. There is a law in India called Geographical Indication Protection and Registration Act 1999. And as per this act, only community which is involved in that particular production is entitled. And if someone without their permission use or deceptively similar made any kind of product, so then there is a violation and there is a provision to take an action against the infringer. So geographical indication is a community's intellectual property right, and here in particularly Kolhapuri Chappal, clearly violation is there. Along with that, there is again violation of fundamental rights.
Okay, but I want to understand from you, Mr. Ingvide, because this is a GI infringement case. Does it lead to any kind of compensation?
Yes.
You would have filed similar cases in the past, and how is this case different from an intellectual property case?
See, this is also an intellectual property right. See, there are different type of intellectual property right. Patent is an individual's intellectual property right. Trademark, visual symbol, like a Tata, Mahindra, etc. That is a different intellectual property right. Copyright, you mentioned about the copyright. That is for literary and artistic work. But for geographical indication, there are three kinds of goods which are entitled for the GI registration. Number one is an agricultural good. The best example is the Darjeeling tea. Number two is a manufacturing good. The best example is a go of any. Either of the activity need to be carried in that vicinity or that particular area. And number three is the third kind of a category of goods which can get the registration is a natural goods. The best example is a Makarana marble. So community when creates something unique, so that is where you can say that community is entitled to get the special kind of recognition, special kind of rights. That is a geographical indication rights. So that's a community's right. And we enacted our law because of the World Trade Organization. So there is a nexus. You will find an international nexus with the GI Act. So hence the GI is particularly an intellectual property right, but this is community's intellectual property right attached or attributed to particular place. And this community, see, they have the skill generation to generation, they continue with their skill where their creation. And then they are entitled to enjoy special kind of benefits for their heritage and cultures.
Okay. Karan and Leon, this is a question addressed to both of you. What gives these brands like Dior, Prada, that confidence that they can get away with this kind of open, brazen stealing of ideas and not even giving, the artisans credit? Is it because they're too big a brand?
I think it's, you're right. They're too big a brand and they think that they have the leverage over everybody else. They also knew that the consumer market has increased massively in consuming all of these international products and goods, which is where a product like, Kolhapuri Chappal, which is originating from India, inspired from India, crafted by the artisans in India, is, easily kind of taken and replicated in their form, in their way, without even giving the acknowledgement to the country. So I think they just take everything for granted that, they belong to the West, they have the right, and they can do anything that they want. But I think this movement is important to put a stop to all of these things because, somebody has to take a stand, right? Yes. And this is, for me, it is obviously a blatant, kind of a copy of the Kolhapuri, a replication of the Kolhapuri. And even if you want to kind of get inspired, like we all get inspired from different things. As artists, as designers, we do get inspired by different things. But give the due credit and the recognition from where you've gotten inspired from, and not later on when it becomes like a, viral news.
Leon, your thoughts?
So I've been thinking about it too, and actually I felt there are many layers to this conversation. It's not as simple as black and white.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of designers in India are also manufacturers to these brands. Okay. So in the sense, when these brands come up with a product, they also in turn give a lot of business to countries like India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, because when a product does well, the orders go to these factories in these countries to manufacture for them. So that is about the compensation angle. Now, coming to recognition, it's unfair to say that Dior has not given recognition. In fact, Dior is one of the brands who, if people follow it, like people over here want to follow it, you can go to their Instagram and their website. They recognize Indian craftsmen. They support all their business through an Indian design house, very much in Mumbai, called Chanakya, and it's immense amount of business and recognition being given for their to the craftsmen, and also remuneration. Like, ultimately fashion is a business, and if these artisans are just given recognition and not compensation, it doesn't help them. A lot of our workers who work for Indian designers, in fact, do not want to work for them and want to work for these international brands because they are better paid by them.
Mayank, you have been part of this entire discussion ever since this entire controversy broke out. There is this view that cultural appropriation should also mean, there has to be some kind of accountability here. And Prada seems to be getting away with accountability.
First of all, I think how Sir has mentioned in his PIL that they have acknowledged, not apologized. So that is established. Also, we have to now look at it because, as you said, we have been talking about it for quite some time, that we don't want to become the boy who cried wolf. Two things. Are we not promoting Indian crafts and artisans at a global level enough so that a brand like Prada, which is globally dominating the market, fashion market, is not aware of Prada Kolhapuri chappals? Are they not doing the homework? Or are we somewhere lacking in not promoting our artisans and craft too much? So that is something that we have to work on. As the designers have said, fashion is a melting pot of cultures, creativity. Designers
but
often...
why not give credit to artisans is the point here. Why is Prada stopping at just acknowledgement, not realizing that this is something that Kolhapur and Kolhapuri artisans have protected it, have built it for decades?
Right. So I think we have to again look back. Are we protecting and promoting our artisans at that level? We have to question it, right?
Yes.
Can a brand like Prada, tomorrow somebody else will come, maybe copy a sari pleating and say, oh, this is our Gucci sari, and walk away with it, Are we protecting our artisans, our culture and our craft that strongly enough? So that is a very, it's a thing to question and think about.
Yes. Mr. Hingmire, since you have filed similar cases in the past as well, what is the right compensation here?
See, basically, there is a provision in the GI Act called Section 22, and that Section 22 to 28 clearly defined. And actually, this is a community's right, and violation of the community rights. There should not be an upper limit. And I can give you one example of the, why it has to be done. And there is no, unfortunately, GI enforcement, unfortunately, had happened, but Darjeeling took 16 cases there in abroad for the violation of their intellectual property right. Darjeeling also received the geographical indication. However, an enforcement, because community can't afford the litigation part, and in such cases that upper limit, it has to be defined, and court may go to some extent that to support the artisans, and only the Section 22 mentioned about the damages, compensation, recognitions, and should not be any violation, and that's what GI Act is all talking about. But let's talk about the statutory right. That's a fundamental rights, violation of the fundamental right, which is there as per the Indian Constitution is concerned, Article 21, which includes right to life, right to livelihood. Further, cultural identity is also covered in the Article 21. So the PIL is also talking about that Article 21. Then further we talked about the PIL is also talked about the Article 29, also talked about the fundamental duty. This is quoting in the Article 51, so that protecting the Indian
Mr.
consumer is...
Are these global brands really driven by, I mean, because of course the GI tag will be applicable within the country. If these fashion shows are happening in Paris or in other parts of the world, can they really get away with it? Because
Good question. I really appreciate this question. I'm really happy for the first time such kind of a question. See, first of all, let me tell you how we enacted the Geographical Indication Act in India. I mentioned in the beginning that we enacted GI Act particularly through WTO's TRIPS agreement. WTO, we all know, World Trade Organization, and TRIPS agreement is a trade-related aspect of intellectual property right. There are 3 articles you will find in the TRIPS agreement: Article 1, Article 2, and Article 3. So we enacted this law through an international arrangement. So there is an applicability. You will find previously the Scotch whiskey fought the case in India, and they have stopped the Indian to start or run the Scotch, sell the Scotch whiskey. So there is an enforcement mechanism which we can adopt, and probably that should be done. I mentioned before also about the Darjeeling. Darjeeling fought many cases. No one can use Darjeeling fought the cases in abroad. But if something is happened at international platform, and since we are a member of WTO, since we are a signatory to the TRIPS agreement, we have certain remedies, and then we can take it to the...
Perhaps, what is becoming clear is that it's going to be a long legal battle. That's what it looks like. And Prada, Dior can very well get away with it. One may say then, Leon, that they would be graceful if they accept and give credit, but given how complicated this entire intellectual property legal system is, they can very well get away with it.
No, they cannot. Indian legal system is strong enough. Indian constitutional law is absolutely enforceable, and court of law particularly giving a special attention for the India's intellectual creation. And when it comes to the tradition,
but where are these cases fought? Where will this case be fought?
We have
International Court of Justice.
There is a separate commercial court established right now in India, and there are fastest possible remedies available. And then that's what had happened in
Yes,
India.
fine.
And that's happened.
Leon, I have just 30 seconds for you, and then I'll give the last word to my friend here, Mayank. There is clearly an attempt to hijack our heritage, hijack what has been carefully preserved by our artisans. And global brands have this great degree of arrogance, or should I say elitism, because of how big they are.
No, I'm honestly very glad to be on the show, to be hearing both sides of the story. In fact, I'm very happy as a designer that there is a code that protects the designs to that extent. From what I've understood is that if you sue somebody for copying a design, firstly you have to prove that that design belongs to you. Secondly, you have to prove that the design copied is exactly copied to the T. So after hearing so much, I feel maybe it's a great idea. It's, of course, recognition has to happen, and I hope it works out.
Yes. One may say that Prada should do its part, but it has also ensured that Kolhapur and Kolhapuri chappals get the right kind of eyeballs. Absolutely. That everybody will go and buy a new pair of Kolhapuri chappals.
Absolutely. I think Prada, by mistake or intentionally, has done a brilliant thing for our culture. And, as Indians, as you've mentioned, whether be it brocade, bandhni, chicken curry, anything, it makes us feel very proud.
Yes.
Because if we take all of that away, Western fashion will have nothing but corsets and black suits.
That's actually very well put. Yeah. I love those chicken curries in particular, and those brocade. They are absolutely, outstanding particularly those embellishments with which they come. Thank you so much for joining us, Karan, Leon, Ganesh, Ingmire, and Mayank here in the studio.